welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And for today's adventure I've come to the top of Glen and hopefully I'm about to go and document a wee abandoned croft way back in the day. And it's actually at the other side of the River Isla from the Glen I'm in. Check out folks, the classic British telephone box from back in the day. And look where it is, out on this desolate, wild piece of land. But it's so cool to see it, the character of that, the redness of the phone box in front of the moor. And it would be such a nice place around here to have a house. Oh, there's some geese. These people have got a few gooses in their garden. Another cool thing about this glen here, once you come up to the top of this road, the main road just ends. It's one way right up to the top of here, and then you have to come back down the same main road. But I need to get, once I get to the top of that road, I need to go on a mud track that continues on, and then hopefully there should be a bridge over the River Isla. But because of the recent storms, who even knows if that bridge has been wiped out or if it's still there, or it's a cool adventure. It's kind of just spontaneous. I believe the old abandoned farm that we're going to look at was actually called Craig Meichy, if I'm right with that. Craig Meichy, which is quite a Scottish name. And I have documented other abandoned farms and stuff like that in Glen over the years, so it's cool to come to this one. I think it's a big area with the old abandoned farm croft house, and I'm sure when I drove up the road a minute ago to look for a parking space, I could see there was like a lime kiln or something interesting like that as well in the land. Now I've come further up here, certain bits of land, there's just no wind at all. And it's such a perfect adventure. Almost springtime, but the land itself still got this wintry look, almost bleak. So it's cool to come and document the abandoned history hidden within that before all the green shrubs and bushes grow up through. Because each year the history gets covered up more and more from wildlife and nature itself. And there's some massive big stones here, and I believe they must have come rolling down that hill. It's a crazy hilly landscape here. Mount Blair is one of the prominent large hills here at the side of Glen And here we are folks, coming out into the opening here. The farm we need to get to is actually probably 4 mile or whatever up this direction. I'm not even sure how far the bridge is. It's quite a long walk, I believe. But one time a couple of years ago, probably like 3 years ago, me and the channel DJ walked up the far side of that river, but we never did make it far enough up to get to the abandoned farm. So today I've come on a brand new adventure up into this glen here, and just look at the way the clouds is rolling over the top of these massive hills. Almost sheer cliff faces. Check it out folks, this sign means we're now entering the Cairngorms National Park, and that shows the boundary in the land here, which begins. Look at these ancient dry stone dikes, the old wall lines of the ancient agriculture on the land here. Still in use these days with the shepherds and the sheep which graze these lands. So this is the River Isla here raging down this side. And look at this, you can see evidence of the recent heavy rain we've had and the crazy storms. There's a lot of bits at the roadsides and stuff that's like washed out, or you can just see how the landscape's been changed. Looks like the River Isla's been pretty high a couple of weeks ago as well. Today it's a proper chilly wind, 4 degrees. Now and again I can see my breath in the wind because it's so chilly. But once you actually get walking often, you kind of acclimatise to the environment you're in. Check it out, this tree here is recently blown down. Look at this folks, the road has now become this mud track, and look how the River Isla has recently taken away the river embankment at the far side. It's so extremely windy here right now folks. I was just putting the camera on just to show how the river constantly changes in these glens. The ferociousness, it often drags away the earth on the outside. But I've seen the bridge and we're almost crossing over. The little abandoned farm is just at the far side here where those trees are. And it's such a cool adventure coming to a place like this, folks. We're literally right out here in the wild hills. And it's just farm remains and old croft remains, probably dating back to the 12 and 1300s here, out on the wild lands. Remains of little farm sheds and things like that. Just think about the communities and families that at one time lived out here night and day, making their earning from these crofts, from the land, wild lands that they originally drained and turned into agricultural fields. Look at this, folks, this little picturesque bridge out in the wild land here. The River Isla just flowing through quite ferociously today because of the wet weather. And yeah, there's footpaths and things that take you right over the hills here at Glen Isla. And I'm hoping just to go beyond this fence and then follow it along. So check it out, folks, we've made it into this historical wonderland here of this ancient farm complex on the hill at Glen Isla. And there's so many little buildings and artefacts of history here to look at, it's incredible. Shout out to the person jogging that I just saw out on this wild hill, folks. This is a real environment for jogging and walking, and the extreme winds today that are bitterly cold but strong. And just look at this old house door up here. Just imagine how old this is, potentially all the way back in the 1700s and stuff. There would have been a little farming community here at the top of this hill. And I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, it was called Craig Michie, which is quite a Scottish word, Michie. On the English tongue you would probably call it Craig Michie. Look at this here. The old piece of wood is still in it. Wow. The grain of the wood is so prominent right there. That's all that's left from the hundreds of years potentially since it was put in to hold the house door into position. And at the end there, that must have been the main kitchen in this department, because it was, well, it must have been the farmhouse kitchen at this end, because there's been a massive range there, or like it looks like a massive fireplace. It's amazing to see that these walls are still standing when you see how eroded they are. All the old limestone mortars, mostly out of them now. There's a bit with the mortar still in. Yeah, you can see how at the top it looks like a dry stone construction, because all that stuff's just washed out with the wild hill. Look at the big fireplace. Wow, a scene like that, folks, it's crazy. The old historical wonders that can be hidden in such a crazy place with a wild landscape like all around it. Just look at the wall here, you can see how they've kind of shaped the stones that they got on the hill. This side's just fallen down, built differently, most likely an animal enclosure or something. But it's been a fair size of a farm in its day. Look at this, oh, that stone's still got the iron hinge sticking out of it. Wow, I love seeing the history, folks, and documenting it. Look at this detail here on the house wall, folks. The stone has got the hole in it. So that shows it must have had a little door or an entrance in at this corner, which is just totally collapsed. So I think there's been a wee farmhouse or a croft house here, but also over there, that's evidence, I believe, of like another house, because I believe that these buildings here have been like the farm sheds, and then that's been the house connected to it. And this was probably still a farm in the 1800s and stuff like that. Wow, here's a cool artefact of history here, I believe, folks. I'll take another walk around this before we go, just so we don't miss any history, but let's take a look at this over here. Look at this, there's wee sheds and stuff with the little lintels and the wee doors for the sheep or whatever, or the pigs to go out and in. Wow, check out this contraption of history right here, folks. Wow, this is so cool. Look at that. I believe what this was is to drive the mill, the barren mill. So when I was saying this was another house at this side, I was wrong, because this was obviously the mill shed at this side. And look how there's been apparatus here bolted on. Look at that, folks. The evidence of history in a place like this is so cool. They've built all this with wild stones off the hill, but yet they've shaped it for their industrial purpose. And look at the size of that drive shaft leading down. Most likely at the bottom of that big drive shaft, it's got a big pinion gear on it, which is driving with a shaft into the farm building to turn the mill. That's why I love coming on adventures like this, folks, like never seen before history on the channel. And each year this sort of stuff just falls down more and more, and it's almost gone. So it's so cool to come and video it and show what was here at a certain time. Probably in the early 1900s, I believe, a place like this was still operating, but most likely by the mid 1900s, like a place like this was abandoned. But I could just see there, it's like so cool to see that industrial heritage of these farms. Then you have to imagine the way they turned this. If they didn't have a source of water for a water wheel, this is where they would have tied on the horse with a piece of apparatus, and the horse used to walk round and round within this circular enclosure here, which most likely was a little shed with a roof connected to the side of the farm. And you have to imagine the horse walking round and round, turning the mill, powering the farm, and the noise of that hustle and bustle, and the noise of all the other animals in the enclosures and stuff, one day was just silenced. And these places are just like a skeleton of their former history, almost lost to nature and time. And the nature up here is the wildest of weathers. It's cool at this time here to see so much of the history. Wow, I can only imagine in the summer how overgrown and stuff sometimes places can get, and there's often wall lines and boundary lines that you just don't see once the vegetation's there. But to see this today, it's been so cool. This sort of thing makes the adventure, because it's just a crazy artefact like that that would have been the latest in technology. Most farms would have had some sort of device to turn their mill like this, but most of the ones like this are just so far gone. That would have been probably a deep pit there, whereas it's been filled in and stuff's been thrown in over the years. And then within this building here is where the mill would have stood, getting turned and powered from the crazy structure out there. Yeah, that's amazing. That'll be the reason you don't see a fireplace or whatever in this building, because it wouldn't have had such a device. Maybe a hay loft or whatever. It would have been quite a small one, judging from what I'm seeing. Just imagine the farmer coming out here night and day. This would have been his wee croft. Nowadays the land is owned obviously by the bigger nearby farm, and that's what happened to most of the crofts eventually. They just got taken over, and the ground still gets used to this day. It's still farming ground even where I stand. It's just this isn't the hub of the farming operations anymore. Yeah, it must have been super like early 1900s, a thing like this. That is like some industrial mill technology, but that is what a farm had. Often they would have to bruise their grain and break the barley as they were mixing up their food for their animals. And the sort of devices they had back then, it's similar. They would still have a device similar to that nowadays, but the way it's turned is just so different. Nowadays there's like bruisers that you get, which are obviously electronically driven and things like that, but back at that time they did what they had like available. No electricity up here, it had to be water power or animal power back then. And sometimes if they didn't have a horse or whatever, they would actually just turn that with a cow. They could strap any animal to that and just make it walk round and round. It's a little side kind of miniature field area, and there's been an internal wall here originally. Maybe when they were like sorting out animals and stuff. This would be the main hub of the farmyard at this little bitty. So there are, folks, more historical wonders documented on the channel. I love fresh places each week, and it's crazy just finding these little nuggets that is just kind of off the map and forgotten about. Just think about the wee animal running out and in that little door. The old stone lintels stood the test of time. Probably originally a little wooden roof, now rotted away, maybe 100 years ago. The character of that, folks, the little opening right there. Wow, it's like the lands that time forgot. You have to imagine this is what all farms may look like one day. If humans just disappeared off the surface of Earth, nature would take back over. Eventually all the stones get knocked over and then covered over from the grass and the mossy land here. And there has been quite a lot of like individual sheds around this location. Yeah, wow, before I push it on further with this adventure, I was just wanting to take this little walk around these middle buildings. All probably had a different purpose in the day. That's been quite a long building in the middle. Look at this, folks, there's like a little track around the side of this agricultural fields that had been cleared from that farm. You can just imagine the old horse and cart coming around this side. Here we go, folks, check it out. An old ancient lime kiln, probably 1700s, never documented before on the channel. And look at that, the lintel stones on this one is sadly down, but wow, you really get an essence of how it was constructed. Back in the 1700s and stuff, most farms had their own lime kiln, and I believe they used to bake the limestone into a powder form and then spread it on the fields to get lime into the ground, but also they used to use it for in their limestone mortar and stuff like that, like we've seen on these old houses and things. So it's a crazy old production facility on the farms back in the day, and it was just part of each Scottish farm, especially around here where they probably had a lot of limestone quarries and things in the ground naturally in certain areas. But yeah, look at the way this is constructed. Probably most likely always dry stone construction, but this is obviously a ferocious furnace of its era. So you have to imagine the heat and stuff that these stones have put up with over the years. And we have documented quite a lot of these lime kilns over the years as well on the channel. So it's cool to see another one here in the wild lands of Glen Isla. And yeah, this adventure is just so cool. I love seeing how they constructed stuff like that with the stones for such a long time ago. And it still just stands today. Obviously farming has moved on so much since these times, it's like, it's an obsolete structure. But look at the character of it, the way the moss and the lichen and stuff grows over it, just looks incredible. And I'm not sure what else they've had here. Maybe chunks of stone line that was ready to throw into the kiln, quarried from a certain area on these hills. And then this track looks like it keeps on going round, which is, I'm just thinking I'm going to go a secondary route. Instead of going right the way back to the main road, I think there's a bridge. If I keep going down this direction, I think I'll just go for that on this adventure, folks. It's like a mad little circuit. Check it out, folks, we've made it into this super windy wonderland lower down the glen, and I've made it to this old bridge. I think last time I came through here we were able to walk underneath this bridge, so it shows how much higher the river is now. And I can see down the glen the sun's almost trying to shine in the distance. Wow, the wind is just so strong coming down here, folks. This will take me back to the main road, and then I need to head back down that way to get to my car. So the adventure's still on. I didn't actually record much coming down that side because it was just so windy, and it was just quite wide open, more like sheep grazing lands. It's so refreshing to be out of the wind. Like, I can't even describe it. Just a small amount of trees like that just makes it so much warmer all of a sudden. Yeah, I couldn't even park at any of these roads because it always says no parking. That's like a lot of these Scottish glens though. They try and minimise folk coming up here and like ruining the landscapes. Because I think over the years, traditionally, people used to leave like a lot of litter and stuff like that up the glens. And everybody gets tarred with the same brush, folks, in that situation. So that's how they're quite private, and you can understand why in these remote glens. The tranquility is part of it out here. There's just no sign of human civilization, apart from like the gamekeepers' houses and stuff. And see now the clouds have lifted a little bit at the top. You can actually see snow on the back hills there. It is mad how the main road just stops and then it's like a mud track. I think it's maybe like another 4 miles or something up to a place called the Tulchan at the far side. And then the road I went was obviously to the other side of the River Isla, which carves these lands here in Glen Isla. Check it out, folks, a lot of these little houses must have been individual crofts, and you can still see a lot of the remains of that nowadays on the land with these wee enclosures all built with dry stone techniques. And the cool thing around here at Glen Isla, the dry stone dikes literally lead right over the hills, as high as those highest hills there, folks. You can see the dry stone dike. You hate to think about the person working every day at the top of that hill building the dike, how long it must have taken, the labour back at that time. Anyway, I'm just about back at the car. I can see it down here in the hollow. I've just been battling against the wind, trying to do these adventures all conditions, folks, and sometimes it's like super windy in Scotland, and even in some of those little glens and that, like, it's dry and perfect for exploring, but the wind just blasts through, the cold icy wind from the top of Mount Blair. But it's such a fun adventure. To see that farm, it normally takes me 2 attempts to pronounce it, folks. Craig Michi, up there in the wild lands there of Scotland. And it's cool to document the old mill apparatus, which at one time turned that mill, and the way it's still there to be seen, that's missing for so many farms. It was cool to document it for the first time. And every week I love having fresh stuff like that, new places that I've never seen, never explored. Another thing I'm always amazed by, like the layers of history and the years that's passed since those places were in their prime. And also it's interesting to have such a variation of history between the wartime stuff to the agricultural stuff in the land with the farming. And that's often the way these lands were shaped when they were first populated by humans. And it's such ancient times ago. Often the Highland clearances cleared a lot of the crofts. But I think with that one, it was still operational probably till about the early 1900s or whatever. Anyway, that's me back at the car, folks, so thanks very much for watching. It was a cool adventure up in the wildlands of Glen Isla, out here in Scotland. We were kind of into the Cairngorms National Park there for that adventure as well, which is a cool detail. You can see that cloud's hardly lifted. It's kind of a wee bit higher than the hills now, but it's still that windy way that it was when I started this adventure. But I'm ending this one here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next one, wherever we end up going.